If you want to destroy a culture, let young women be the influencers to set the culture. And that's the world that we live in.
Nah, really the most prolific destroyer of cultures in history would be, Christianity. But you don't really want to hear that, do you, Pastor Mark? Yeah, no, it wasn't young women. It was actually grown-up men, right? Grown-up men in fancy robes telling other men with pointy sticks and metal shirts to go and spread an ideology through violence and oppression, to eradicate texts and stories and cultural practices and traditions that they deemed heretical for contradicting their dogma, to superimpose their own stories onto pre-existing cultural practices so that the original cultural idea and cultural identity slowly disappears into the fog of history, and vilifying and eradicating the people that tried to stand up for themselves and fight back by keeping their own traditions and cultural practices alive. And in today's world, the dominant narrative is not wokeism or leftism or the gay liberal agenda. It's also not Christianity. It's actually global consumer capitalism. In fact, it's such a dominant cultural narrative that we don't even really consider it a cultural narrative. We just think of it as the way things kind of are. And the actual people that hold the most influence over that cultural narrative are still, you guessed it, not young women, right? They're actually still mostly older men, right? The fancy robes have changed a little, and the pointy sticks have gotten a hell of a lot more intimidating. But besides that, the overall practice is fairly similar, right? They go around the world, they spread their ideology through force, they paint themselves as the good guys, and the people that don't embrace their ideology, right? The heretics, they get demonized. They're terrorists. They're evil. They get the pointy end of the stick. And not surprisingly, this new ideology has actually kind of done to Christianity the same thing that Christianity did to its own predecessors, hyperimposing its own narrative onto pre-existing cultural traditions, eroding the original intent and redirecting it towards its own purposes. In the case of consumer capitalism, the purpose is obviously consumption. In fact, you're actually kind of evidence of this yourself, aren't you? Evangelical preachers redirecting people's cultural identity towards modern divisive political narratives that have nothing at all to do with the teachings of Jesus Christ, but ultimately everything to do with reinforcing the status quo. And apparently we've come full circle all the way back to the narrative that all the problems are being caused by scary young women with too many opinions.